wonderful. you know, and I mean, I'm convinced that we all are. We're just, we're all like in, memory and, fantasy, and we're all just, I know I am. I'm in like a million places in the course of a day. Physical places, like parts of the world,
No, I remember you were like in my New York. Is that Barbara? Is that Alex?
How we doing?
What's up, Alex? And Gloria, I think. But she's got no face right now. That's okay.
So we're going to give folks a minute or two more to sign in before we get started.
Cool.
Get comfortable. We are also live on YouTube.
That's right.
So,
Forgot about that.
ta-da.
Yeah, Greg, I put the link for I try to do it on all the, make it easier, because I think some people, they wanted to live stream it. I was like, if you're cooking, if you're eating, you don't want to log on Zoom.
Yeah, you can just watch it like a TV show.
Exactly. TV dinner, bring it back to the 50s anyway in the US.
Greg, can you also put up Cary's bookshop.org pre-order link too?
Oh, sure. Can you send me that?
Sure.
I'll share that in a second. All right. So should we get started, and I can let people in as anyone. All right. So welcome everyone to the launch of Joshua Bookman's To All the Friends I Killed. And we're also joined by Cary Johnson, a writer who will be hosting in September for the launch of his book, Desire Lines. So thanks for joining us. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. And the Bureau is a government agency for a government that does not yet exist. The service that we provide is holding a space for queer books and queer culture. So we are a bookstore. I'm coming to you from home right now, but we do have a physical bookstore inside the LGBT Center, Community Center on West 13th Street in Manhattan. And our summer hours are Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And we're taking it kind of easy. So this is the last event we have for a while. So we're happy you can join us now. I'm going to be introducing our two authors, and then we're going to just get started. So Joshua Kent Bookman was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and reformed by life and work in Sweden, France, and Italy. Previously published works include Fruits of Myrrh, Close to Elsewhere, or is it Fruits of Mare? I guess it should be Mare, not Myrrh.
Depends what language. It's like a play on mare is mare is sea in French, but also mother, and then fruit is pejorative. Fruit is fruits in French, but it's a pejorative in English for, obviously.
Yes. Multiple meanings.
Multiple things.
Also published works include Close to Elsewhere, Hitom, and Some Reverse American Dreams. To All the Friends I Killed is Bookman's second novel. Cary Alan Johnson is an author, activist, and Africanist raised in Brooklyn. He has a bachelor's degree from Sarah Lawrence College and a master's degree in international affairs from Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs. A longtime innovator in queer politics and cultural activism, he was a founder of several groundbreaking organizations, including the Black Heart Collective, Gay Men of African Descent, Other Countries, and the International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission. A public health and HIV specialist, Cary is currently the country director for Population Services International in Burundi, and he is joining us from Burundi. So thanks so much for staying up late, Cary, and thank you, Josh, for joining us here. So please give them a warm and very visible welcome to this event. I also want to give a shout out to Michelle Carlsberg, who helped to organize this event and so many of the events that we host at the Bureau. So keep it up, Michelle. Thank you.
Great.
Cool.
Josh and Cary, it's all you.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm gonna launch right in, and Joshua Kent Bookman,
Yes.
tonight is your night. Today is your
Okay.
day. Today's the day that we this moment that we put aside to really celebrate what you've done, what you're doing. I think the thing that moves me the most about you is how good you are at such a young age, and you have this career in front of you that's really very exciting. And I'm really thrilled to be part of this launch experience. People ask you to do things like this, or they send you a book and you're like, okay, I really hope, I'm going to be able to work with this. And I knew from the beginning that, there's so many things about this book that I like. That I loved, in fact, and it was, and I'm thrilled that we're going to get a chance to talk about as many of the elements of the book and where you were going with the book, and as possible. And one of the ways I know that I'm really going to love a work of fiction, in particular, is when I immediately start reading and I start underlining. There are passages that I want to be able to find again, sentences, poetry. And there was so much of that in this book. It just hit in such a wonderful way. There's a sentimentality to the book that is sort of, I think, in many ways sort of based, I call it a sort of a French kind of sentimentality, a sort of a European kind of sentimentality, a tenderness. The book is relatively short at 142 pages for a novel. So in my mind, that really gave you, the author, the chance to be poetic in some wonderful ways. There's just so many passages I underlined. Maybe I'll get a chance to share some of them, where your word choice was just so precise, more like the writing of a poet, I would think, than a novelist who feel that they have all this expanse of time and language, but you really honed right in, and your language, a sentence had to stand in for a whole lot of thoughts and feelings. So I could go on, and I will. I have a few other things
You can.
I shall.
You will.
Yes, but I think what would be great would be, if we give ourselves, people who have maybe not have read the book yet, or, but just folks who want to hear you read from it like me, maybe we'll just give you a chance right now to, read at least an initial passage from the book, and we'll have a chance to hear another before we part ways. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's cool. I just want to say first, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Cary. Thank you. People who are here or on YouTube. I can't tell who's on YouTube, but I believe there's at least 7 who had messaged me. So I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll just go right in, and then Cary, you can ask me whatever after. And there's hopefully Barbara and Jeff have seen this, but there are music, and I hope it works on Zoom. I have no idea. And if the music quality sucks, then I won't do it for the second chapter. All right. Can you hear that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. We were playing a new version, text and seek. Kaisa would text me the coordinates of where she was at, say a cemetery. I'd show up to the cemetery. She'd be behind the trees, see me, text me another location. She'd already be at a Japanese restaurant, food on the table, waiting with 2 chopsticks. Kaisa was my sister, but someone I met later in life, after college, when some high school friends had moved and others lost touch. She acted just like a sister, loyal, and if we had fought, it was temporary. I never considered her a friend, even if that's what strangers thought she was. The most remarkable of our lives had to be elevated to family. She drew on the chopsticks, little hash marks with her fingernails, faux characters that said something wise, not Buddha wise or Shinto wise, but sister wise. Like days were better spent outside in the rush of the morning, 15 minutes before lunch. She had a thing for little moments, periods of time that wasn't labeled ordinarily. Early morning or late morning was 7:47 or 11:49. Those specific times, that's what defined us. I like this because I had a Swiss friend obsessed with watches. Typical, stereotypical, yes, but it reinforced the point that it wasn't the precision of time that Kaisa liked. It was the momentary flashes of time that no one else thought to celebrate. After 2 minutes before ordering, impatience was the virtue, because as soon as she'd be hungry and I'd be hungry, that's when she said, "Don't you like that feeling?" "What feeling?" I asked. "Where you know you're hungry but can't order because the server's with someone else." "How's that a good feeling?" "It's the 2-minute anticipation," she said. "You know the waiter will be there in just a minute or two, but you'll have to endure it anyway. Just make you that much edgier." The endurance of impatience, another inscription she slashed on the chopsticks. This time, though, she took 2 bamboo knives in her fingertips and scraped little paper-like indentations into the table. Kaisa had sea glass eyes, hazy and brittle. I thought my eyes were prettier, but when she was upset, they dazzled the room with unusual tints of color, ocean blue and bottle green. My eyes couldn't do that. They were marked with crimson. We'd order at last. Her endurance, her thing, impatience, my thing. There was no shame in it since she smiled at me when I hailed the waiter. I couldn't wait any longer. "A beer," I said. "A beer?" she said. "A beer or 2, the waiter asked. "1 beer, Kaisa said. Then the waiter would leave and she'd start the game all over again. Why, if I was so hungry, did I order drinks in the first place 15 minutes ago and then be ready to place the order? We'd fight about nothing, really. That's why she was my sister. Friends would fight and I'd need space for at least a day or 2, but our arguments never lasted longer than a couple hours. Once I got so mad, I shut the door on her, and then she just sat outside, slumped against the wall until she had decided I had brooded so long enough and kicked my door open. She has siblings had higher courage in diffusing one's worst emotions. 6 months later, Kaisa would ask for the specials, the back list of the waiter's notebook, scribbled in Japanese. I let her order because she'd struggled to repeat what was said, rapid fire. After the minutes of bickering, we'd sit in silence. The long wait before the order again. We'd order and then more silence. Kaisa took this as an opportunity to play another game, texting me from the kitchen of the restaurant. Somehow she had snuck in. "What's the opposite of butter?" The answer wasn't obvious, say olive oil. It'd be a sequence of answers. I have to think of the question. We're at a Japanese restaurant, so it wasn't a pretty obvious choice, but aesthetics, the Japanese way of arranging the plate or the choice of color. Butter was yellow. Like the shiso leaf, the particular color of the green leaf, the particular color of butter could matter. But maybe she wasn't thinking of color theory. That was too much my reasoning. The opposite of yellow was purple, like the sour plum, the ones you can get in a jar, pickled, rumpled skins rolling against the purple salt water. The purple was overused, so she meant violet. Violet, the faded color of purple, the intense color of purple. These were both legitimate because she's forcing me to play the game deliberately, slowly thinking of all the possible combinations of what butter and butter couldn't be. I was her sister, Violet was her sister. So the opposite of sister was me, her brother. Again, it's not that Kaisa couldn't have had siblings from childhood. If someone asked me to tell the truth, I'd say yes. Kaisa has 2 siblings. There's nothing shameful about vocalizing the strength of our relationship. Nothing in the world is as creative as our games, as fulfilling as this back and forth that wasn't covered in magazine or television scripts. How could it be, since we're the ones who only need the game? We only knew the game. We only knew the game. I need to admit, though, that the games didn't last much longer. Kaisa was struck by a car. We were walking from the cemetery to the nearby park. I wanted to go on the swing set, but she said that was childish. Even though the week before she had begged me for the same thing and never say I was childish of her, the older sister suggested something so crude and unimaginative to limit our fun to the prequel park swing. I didn't like this idea, and as we were walking to the park, run jogging at this point, I pushed her into the street. There was a little cemetery, a little street between the cemetery and the park. No, there weren't cars. But this time there were cars, one car. I pushed her into the street with that car. I report this, that's like how sisters end up. 4 years later, they're gone. But to this day, I don't understand. I tried calling the police. No, I don't have a legitimate thing to report. Thing? She needed an ambulance. They asked me to list in every detail of what happened, but I couldn't because I admit I was in shock and no, I hadn't intended to do anything. Even at that moment in time, I was mad. This moment, I am still mad because no one had loved me as much as Kaisa. The police told me to go again, retell the part between the cemetery and the park, and I couldn't because it was just too much. The days kept going. Each officer would call, and I had managed to say something that would help recreate the situation, but I didn't want to create anything. I wanted to pretend it never happened. Let's move on from what happened. We were both at fault. We were the sun of our lives, and 2 weeks later, it was over. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Wow. I like the way you read. You're deeply immersed in the work, and the drama of it. Thank you. She had a thing for little moments. That's a great line. You just tell us so much about her in that one line, about how unique she was. And then I love the line, I thought my eyes were prettier than hers. Which is, that's when a writer is getting to honesty to me, because
No, it's pure jealousy.
Yes. And how about pure human?
Pure human. Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing we don't like to say about ourselves, but I think we're.
Yeah. Well, because also it's like in real time, we don't know what we like about someone. We're immediately attracted to some maybe, but our emotions precede what's actually going on. And I think that's tough because I think especially like to me, big context of growing up in the 90s and now being in the sort of digital era is we're bombarded by information. We're bombarded by like fragments of emotion, often either media clips, either from official media or text from our friends or emails from people. And it's just, there's so much information processing happening that we don't get a chance to do. And I think it's still important, like to express that, like to be human. But I think also we're afraid to be too angry or to some X emotion, which maybe pushes people away.
Well, and it's the human that makes a book, particularly a book of fiction, universal. And anybody look it up.
Yeah.
Let me just say, because I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. That chapter, has to do more work than most first chapters in books. First chapter is super important in every book, but that chapter sets us up for, the rest, for everything that this moment that something happens. And then the rest sort of, flows from that. And so, any book, any good work of fiction is about relationships, but you are focusing on siblingry, right? And everything gets filtered through that initial relationship, that chosen sort of sibling. Okay. Can you talk a bit about why you chose that type of relationship to write about?
Yeah, I think a couple of reasons. One, I think in the US, well, in societies that are not traditional, or when you get to third or fourth or fifth generation of any, let's say Americans, you're losing that traditional network. I remember I had a family friend say, like in the 40s in New York, I don't know if that's true, but people used to live on the same block as their cousins. And when they immigrated, they moved as units. And I think partially the internet, but also part of our society is really split and fragmented. And I think if you move to a new city, especially the US, that's so migratory, you get chances to meet new people in your lives who are, I think, displace or replace chosen family. Oh, sorry, biological family. So I think that was one reason. I think two, I think the interesting thing about gender is that it's easy to choose a communication style based on your own ways of progressing. Like as a kid, you copy certain ways of speaking. And I think one of the unique aspects of a sibling relationship is hopefully if it's the opposite gender, you respect that form of communication. And I think it's partially metaphorical, but also partially literal, where you're given a chance to see someone who isn't you, that you're forced to be with them, even if they're not quote male or quote female. And I think that's really important, because I think we lose that hearing as we group by just quote men or quote women or quote even groups, like even if you take a metaphor of like how we elect, let's say, I don't want to get too political, but Republicans or liberals, you start closing your ears off to different forms of relationships. So I think, to me, a sister or a brother is a great relationship to push and to test things. But I think, also, like, simply, I think it's really hard to be alone in your 20s and you haven't yet chosen a partner, potentially. Let's say everyone in like a Judeo-Christian context is choosing that marriage, then you've excluded other relationships that are also just really important, like your friends or quote siblings. Originally, the book was called My Decade Sister, and my decade sister, like a fill-in relationship to test things. And I think it was too intellectual and too like complicated. So I think part of the sad part is I don't know, because I'm not in my 40s or 50s, but I've heard you lose a lot of relationships as you get older, partially through choices you make and also just not enough time. So
I see head shaking on the call.
People are 30 plus, tell me.
You know what, but Josh, I mean, you've led right into, so can I read a quote from the book and have you respond to it? I hope I did. Yeah. If your 20s, I'm sorry, I forget which chapter, this is sort of midway through the book or towards the end. If your 20s and 30s aren't consumed with the right type of relationships, you were focusing on the wrong things. If your 20s and 30s didn't end in marriage, you were an outsider. I mean, that was one of the places I had to stop and put the book down and just sort of say, what is this? I mean, this young man know about these kinds of things? But talk about that a bit. This perception of, relationships of a certain type have to happen at a certain time, or else you're an outsider.
Yeah, I think if you view life as competitive, or if you view life as stressful, you're in your 20s, you're emotionally feeling like you still got to fit in, but also still got to make decisions that you want. Your values are forming. And I think the pressure is really easy to fall into because you're still really sensitive. You're not technically an adolescent, but you're still out of control in terms of what you, I mean, there's a reason why presidents have to be 35 plus, like I think or hopefully, I don't know. Anyway, but I'll bite my tongue. But I think it's really easy until you get to that age to respond emotionally, or whether it's anger or jealousy or anything, to people moving fast than you. Maybe they're moving in promotion. Maybe they have better jobs than you. Maybe they're in a relationship. I mean, whatever the factor is, I think it's really easy to get jealous or feel left behind. And I think either emotion leads to feeling like an outsider, because you feel like you haven't caught up in time. I think K through 12, you're sort of on this track, or even K through 8. I don't know. It depends on your education system. But I think it's really easy and really scary when, again, like in the context of not being in a traditional family society, feeling like in the US, like you're 18, you're like, goodbye, or even earlier for a lot of people. And I think that's a huge challenge. I think it's really scary to have that, because when I was living in Italy, people even their 30, the reason why they call mama girls and mama boys, because they're still living with their family at 30 until marriage, And even I remember when I was working there, that I was working at a high school, work would stop at noon. Everyone would go home, including the kids, and you'd have lunch with your family, even if it was a half-hour drive, And that made a huge impact on me because in the US, eat at your cubicle, eat fast, eat whatever. And that was the first time I really saw a society prioritize family as the unit rather than the individual. And it was eye-opening.
But what kind of family? Because Yeppe, is that how you pronounce the character?
Yeppe, yeah, Yeppe. Yepe.
The characters, I mean, amazing list of characters, and how one pronounces their names, I guess, is not that important so much as who they are.
Right.
But he
Correct.
consistently, in my opinion, chooses siblings throughout the book. As like, trying to recreate to some extent or find his way through what happened with Kaisa. But even when he sort of seems to make a connection with Luca, even that does not, like a lot of gay men, I think, excuse me, I'm going to speak for myself here, as this gay man and many others, spend time, in their 20s and 30s and forever trying to make that, especially now, like post kind of marriage, hopefully we'll keep it, trying to make that primary relationship as family. And you talk a lot. That's not what he does. Your main character is he's looking for other kinds of connections.
Yeah, I mean, I think the example too is like, you're at a bus stop, you meet someone, maybe you'll never see them again. And that's your only chance to meet someone. Or you're playing tennis with someone or soccer, I don't know. You meet someone at a sports event. It's a random event. You say hello, you hit it off, pure stranger, but you don't get a chance again. And I think he's fascinated, this character, by if you choose not to live if you leave your home, you start realizing there are other ways and other types of relationships and other people you can open yourself up to. And I think that's really gratifying to him, because I think, it's not really in the book, but clearly he chooses not his original home, or at least he's disturbed by it and it has an upsetting event, So I think I've personally met plenty of people, random places, stadiums, like, I mean, I don't know. I think it's not, I think there are just so many chances in life to meet people who you have no particular relationship with.
Right.
And I've always told, like, even Sweden, they call Americans have a superpower, which is like to just randomly connect to people because we're so friendly. Like we seek, like I had this Norwegian woman once said, because everyone, like in the US, you say, hi, how are you? Right? You don't mean it. It's just a way to say, it literally just is hello. But people assume, like if you said, I'm terrible, like, right, you'd be weird. Like you'd looked at weird. But she said to me, actually, I really like it because it makes me feel seen. Like someone's personally paying attention to me. And that was the first time I've ever heard someone positively say the hi, how are you is actually really refreshing. I mean, obviously you're in the grocery line and you're the worker. It's exhausting to say that 15,000 times. But I think there's beauty in the American culture of being really open and being really like being celebrating newness. Like, I think it's a form of curiosity. It gets us in trouble because I think people view it as playing the police or the parent of the world. But yeah, I think he's seeking all these interesting relationships that the US gives us, or at least that's what he's exploring, because it burns you eventually. Because then they're like, wait a minute, do you really care about me? I don't know. I forget the quote, but it's like they say Americans are like peaches, like we're really soft, like approachable, and then you get to the core and then like we can't touch us, then it's the core. Versus the French, they're like, I don't know, coconuts or something, like really hard exterior, really hard pretense, or like they don't know you. I mean, this is a generalization, obviously. And then they're soft, you're loyal, and I think it's interesting, that trajectory that he's exploring.
Well, I mean, and that is what he does. He is an explorer. That's who he is. And the book is in, happens in a few different places. And you talk about like, Americanism, like, being in American and foreign spaces. But talk a bit about the space between, like, is it adventure or is it displacement or is it both? Because he definitely seems like, the book, it's a travelogue in many ways. It like follows him as he has these different experiences in different countries.
I I think it's a good question. I think it's a mix. I think in order to figure out what your limits are individually, you have
Right.
to make mistakes and errors. And I think maybe one of the grave errors he made was getting too close to Kaisa, or at least thinking that she was real, or
Hmm.
realer. I mean, it's arguable, right? Because I mean, I'm not here to say whether she's alive or not, but I think it's important to ask ourselves what there's always a flip side to being something, you know, like there's a consequence, I guess is the word. Like there's
Hmm.
repercussion, you know, for your actions. You're not immune. Like I think American exceptionalism says, oh, we can do this, we can do that, but to what end, you know? There are what happens when the land runs out or the oil runs out or whatever, you know? What's your behavior then? What are you gonna do? And I think, you know, he makes a lot of mistakes by getting too close or being too curious.
Hmm.
But I think he'd rather be curious than end up smaller than what he could have been.
Sure. Curious he is. Like he doesn't back off of,
No,
any relationship. He's like
no.
right up there.
He's
You know,
provocative.
he's provocative. He's, he doesn't have a lot of filters.
No,
Like in the relationship with Marie,
yeah,
uh, who like, the vineyard owner.
yeah.
Um, he's so upset by her dishonesty, right?
Hmm.
Like, he goes deep. Let me ask you one more question, and then let's ask you to read some more, and then we'll open it up to,
Sure, sure.
the folks who come to talk to you. I keep using the word multiverse because I just saw Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Yeah,
whatever the title of that wonderful film is, with Michelle Yeoh. But the novel happens in multiple places. I mean, it's linear, and
yeah.
that's, I think, but it happens in multiple places at the same time, and not just, flash, people, other characters. We follow one character, and he can be in multiple places in the same paragraph,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But I never had trouble following the line of, and once I got it, that, like, he multiverses. That's what I call it. Once I got it, it was like, oh, that was just the flow of the thing, and it never slowed me down. I think it added to the, my interest. Can you just talk about that a bit as a stylistic choice?
Yeah, I think I'll say it in two ways. I think resentment isn't linear. Like I think we're always in multiple places based on pain. Like I think we're way too complex human like as humans to always be in one place. Like I think um like love is universal is I think too trite, but essentially how we form memories isn't linear. And even though we proceed, like even though the Christian calendar or Gregorian calendar is linear, I don't think that's how humans operate. And in terms of the style, I think it's interesting to, like Proust is like in search of lost time. Like I think this guy is in search of like new time or different ways of looking at time. Because I think as soon as we lock in, like I think the beauty of poetry is that you're not always looking at it in one way. Like the best way I can describe it is with the title. Like, is it to all the friends I killed, or all the friends, the ego, I, like that personal pronoun, like I only matter, like to all the friends I, being so selfish, killed, being so narcissistic, being so whatever, being so greedy, being so jealous, being so loving, being, whatever. Like I think because it's also like if you immigrate or if you move, you're not one person, you know? If you've lived in at least two cities, you're not the same person. If you've lived in two houses, you're not the same person. No way. If you've been a child and an adult, you've lived two lives, maybe three lives. I don't know, four lives, five lives. Like I think we cut ourselves off because people tell us we can't do X, but I think everyone's capable of Like, obviously we have relationships with probably at least 100 people, 15 people. I mean, based on how big your family is. So I would say poetry is, or the style is the only way to get at these, like this play between being really selfish and being really generous, or being really part of a family and not being part of a family, you know? Like, I think it's a way to explore that. I've always used time because I think I've lived in so many places and I've seen so many ways of operating or ways of living. Even Sweden was completely different, you know? Like I'll say this and then I'll read, but like when I was living there, I'd try to plan like a coffee date, and I'll be like, so how does next week sound? And they're like, oh, I can't do next week, but how about, and say it's like June. They're like, I'll be like, how about June 15th? They're like, I could do December 17th if you're available. Like, they plan 6 months, you know, like, and they're not kidding, you know, they're so plan oriented that even now when I get back to the US, if someone emails me, I don't read email. I'm like, oh, maybe I won't email them for a month, you know, because I just maybe I don't want to deal with them, you know. And it's terrible, but also like, even living in the vineyard, which I think is more related to the book, if you live on a vineyard, you're not operating by the time clock, you're operating by whether it's rainy or not. You can't work if it's rainy, or you can't work if it's too sunny. You can't pick the grapes. It's too hot. Grapes will burn. So I think like, depending on where you live, time means something different, or how old you are. Like, I heard, I don't know if like you're in your 70s or 80s or 90s, but I heard like you let go of things really quickly. Time moves differently. You operate ancestrally, maybe. So anyway, I'll read this from this chapter. There is some sound for this, but not yet. Hold on. One sec. I wait for the day technologies. Not like this. Okay, cool. This is much later in the book. This is at the vineyard, or we think. Maybe it's not the vineyard. Maybe it's at the psych ward. My day off from the vines began at police. That's all the royal blue letter said, not emergency or police station. I stood outside and walked past the bike rack. 30 wheels jammed up onto each other. Felt like the station was more a gymnastics center than a serious official building, but maybe that was the point. You shouldn't feel afraid to report a crime, because that's what I was about to do. I fumbled with the vial in my pocket. My prints were on it, but surely that wouldn't matter. The police must have had sophisticated instruments like on television. Your name? The administrator asked. He did not look up from the computer in front of his face. My name? Maybe it was a bad idea. Yes, your name for the system? Yepe. Sorry, please spell it. J-E. Yep. Yes, you have it now. I'm in your system? Yes, precisely. I was a bit confused. I know Marie had taken down all of our names, but I didn't think she was sending them anywhere. Maybe the union had it as a legal requirement, and by default, the police would too. And you're here for? The administrator continued. His glasses were slipping from his nose. I'm reporting a crime. Yes, that's understood. I'm reporting a scandal. A scandal or a crime? I'm not sure. Does it matter? Yes. The hands hovered over the keyboard. Crime, I said. I heard keys quickly move like bullets. I believe a vineyard is using illegal production methods. One moment. He got up from his chair and proceeded to the back. I waited in the lobby, looking up at the artwork on the wall. There was a photograph of 3 men, which I assumed was the police unit. They held their caps in front of them as if they were just starting to pose for a more official photo. There was also a little coffee table and some dusty books. One, The Desert of Love, with a bookmark. On it, someone had written a little note, which was now faint ink. We are all of us, molded and remolded by those who have loved us. And though that love may pass, we remain nonetheless their work. I closed the book, placing it back on the coffee table. I looked up again at this photograph. Yepe? Yes, that's me. A policeman with broad shoulders stood over me. With me, please. He held me through a corridor as we approached his office. He closed the door and motioned me to sit. A fan was buzzing. I'm Inspector General Moriek. I've been in charge of this station for 15 years now and oversee investigations into our more serious cases. I'm sure my assistant at the front explained this all to you. Yes, I said. Now, please explain this crime you speak of. He placed his hand on a pad of paper he had on his desk. Scandal, I said. It's a scandal, not a crime. He was at least 30 pounds overweight. He reached under his desk for a pack of cigarettes. Would you like a smoke? He lit himself one. No, thank you, I said. He took a puff and then exhaled. Now, remind me. I was told this was a vineyard scandal, you said? Yes, in the area. And which vineyard is it you are reporting? He tapped the cigarette over his keyboard, which I realized was outdated at least 5 years. Chateau Lacoste, I said. Ah, yes, Mary's. You know her? Yes, we all know each other. I tried to shift my seat to catch more of the fan, but it was no use. Now, tell me, what exactly is she accused of? It's not an accusation, I said. It's the truth. She cheats her wine. For the next couple of minutes, I was describing the scenes I was privy to. When Marie had showed me the vats and shook the bottles with yellow, how he went to the cemetery, she picked up a plot of land to give thanks for all the hard work she had endured. The Inspector General nodded, listened, taking a note where he saw fit. But after a while, I noticed he had stopped writing. And what is your proof? I held the vial in front of my pocket. For a moment, I thought he was beginning to prepare a detailed report. He just sat there, hands clasped. Now, Yeppe. Excuse me. He got up from the table. Oh, Yeppe, now where was I? Yes, Yeppe. This is a position I've taken for now 15 years. I've heard similar accounts as yours. Not the same chateau, of course, but vineyards here and there, tampering the bottles and such. I must say this is a serious matter and I cannot just proceed with the sex like that. Arrest, oh, excuse me, arrest. But I can assure you I will look into this. Thank you, I said. But you do know this means I will have to stop by? Yes. I will have to ask her questions. She might suspect something. Okay. Why is that an issue? Well, she might begin to wonder why all this is happening. How I got my information. I walked out of the office as fast as I could, thinking many things. One, why was she there? Why she said we had friends when we knew each other. This was for sure a setup. Maybe it wasn't the other chateaus that were being reported. It was hers all along. But if he was here for 15 years, it wouldn't make a difference. Even in the best case of scenarios, that he was honorable, it wouldn't matter because Marie wasn't. She'd make me pay. And for that, I realized I had to go back. I can't go back to the vineyard, not today. I went to Bordeaux. I took the bus and I realized with the landscape shop when I landed, it was Boston somehow. Sister cities connected, the same size, trading power, at least one point in its history, but now bigger. Boston was bigger. Yeah, it was part of the US, the empire, where Bordeaux, that was long ago history. Napoleon no longer. Maybe us too, but not yet. Kids squealed in the background. Lovers screaming too. The angel was suspended above, and for a second, it looked like the Pilgrim Monument in Provincetown. Blink and you could see other cities, maybe an Istanbul skyline that looked like 1940s New York. We have to look at ourselves in multiple places, otherwise a righteous mind would assume our present conditions as eternal. My phone was buzzing at this point. Marie was calling. I entered an ice cream shop, no bigger than a corridor, whiteboard scrawled in pink lettering, vanilla with bits of pastry. That's it? I said. Marie texted me. Yes, one flavor, the scooper said. He curved a soft scoop of ice cream, striped and studded with cannelé pastry. He then had handy his spray bottle of rum, labeled just R, spritzing just first the statue on the counter, a head replica of a slave face, then my cup, then me, the mist of sugarcane. What I barely remember, of course, was binging on 4 pastries, and later that afternoon, classes de réunion. Marie kept calling. Yes, hello? Your day off? She shouted. Have you given it a thought? Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Hey, young man, that's your day I'm talking about. Huh? The rum was strong, but it could have been Marie. Have you given a thought? The vials? I could hear her. She was in the back room of the barrel she had kept. She started to imitate French ambulance noises. They're coming to get you. I held my ear closer to my ear. I hold my phone. I could hear her fingers tapping against the barrel. I'm thinking. Good. Think like the sirens. Lock up and sedate you if I hear no. Okay, bye, Yeppe.
Okay, that's great. I love that, you know, he's, well, wonderful French accent, by the way, on point. And I love that he you know, the author is debating, and Yeppe is debating, the police, you know, official is debating, is it a scandal or a crime? You know, like that's a really big deal, like, you know, the difference is a big deal. And of course, he's not talking about the wine, you know, I mean, he is, but, you know, everything goes back to that first chapter and what he did or what he thinks he did with Kaisa, and, you know, how he makes sense of that, you know, in his life and in his future. So, okay, great, man. So I think this is, let's open it up for some input or questions from the folks who...
Anyone can ask. Anyway, it's all free. It's all debatable.
So, Greg, how does that work? Do people just unmute themselves?
Yeah, we're small enough. You can unmute yourself, or if you're feeling a little shy, you can also put it in the chat function. I can read it aloud. Okay. Either way, it's fine.
I see. Is there anything in the chat now? I see. No, those are just intro stuff. Oh no, but someone said, Joshua, wise and insightful beyond you. It doesn't matter who said it. Somebody said it.
No, I know.
It was a Barbara. And Barbara's no. Such beautiful prose and observations.
I'm definitely questioning your age. I mean, it was absolutely wonderful, and thank you. And there's a couple of things I picked up on, and when you were talking about the title, and you were interpreting what it meant or what it could mean, the one thing you didn't say was someone who hurt you. And I found that interesting. I'd have to go back to see, I could be wrong, but for some reason I'm like, wow, everything he said, he didn't say about someone hurting him. And then I was thinking of this new genre that you can write, which would be this mysterious fictional poetry. Okay. You have a shelf for that, Greg?
Not yet.
I mean, it's just, I don't know. I just found a whole bunch of different genres. And have you ever written poetry?
Oh yeah, I did, and then I had a teacher that was not nice. So then I also think it's. I mean, he was mean. He this girl. It was a poetry class, and she really liked Sylvia Plath. Mm-hmm. And he was like, she killed herself. Totally shut her down. Was like, she put herself in an oven or whatever the death was, And I was like, that's not really helpful towards her, and the girl walked out of the class. She never came back. And I think it's actually, I can say he's dead now. Franz Wright. I don't know if you remember him. He won the Pulitzer. He was very, very provocative, very controversial, very talented, but also I think insensitive in some ways towards education and how long it takes to develop a voice. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I like poetry, and I think it's always a challenge, like the genre you choose, because if you're too poetic, then people don't know how to read you. Then they feel like, because they think, we're not in the ancient Greek society where people or Iran, like where people expect lines to be memorized, or like the Bible, like we're not in necessarily a place where people have the same access to the same quotes, which I think lead to better engagements with poetry. So I think as an American, it's a really hard choice, because I think one of my first idols was William Carlos Williams, who was a doctor and a poet. And he always said, American English is just as beautiful as British English. It's just a different rhythm. And I think it's like, Dante's Inferno. It's unbelievable, but who has time to read the Florentine dialect? So I think it's really hard to choose between. I love poetry, but I think eventually it's like Tennessee Williams, like his dialogue is poetic, but he's chosen prose, like it's a tough, and I don't know the choice yet of like that balance, and I think I want to strike it eventually where you feel like you get both clear, precise language, but also mysterious or multiple interpretations, because I think that's more beautiful,
Well, I think you're on your way to striking that balance. I mean, I think the question is, who's your reader? I think when people read fiction, when I read fiction, I want a story. Like, like I don't want to be like, I don't want to have to read every paragraph 3 times. Like some paragraphs you just sail on through, but then I want to like get caught because you said something amazing. Oh wow. I don't know if I can find it right now, but just something about hangovers. Oh, what did you say? Hangovers pass in the afternoon. Just one short sentence, something like that. And it was just like, I found it so it moved the story forward, but it also made this sort of commentary that I thought was very poetic about hangovers. There's a comment from Vivian Jablonski saying Vivian is apologizing for the camera and the sound being off. They're at a baseball game. Their husband is coaching. I'm Vivian's comment. My question is about the process of writing. I completely agree with Cary's observation that the book very much reads like poetry. I'm wondering if you write smaller vignettes or paragraphs first and then link them together. Good question. Or write linearly. Because many of the paragraphs are beautiful in their own right. It's very, following on just what I said, and wondering what your process is in terms of linking them together.
Yeah. Hi, Vivian. I can show you kind of. This is one writing process. Hopefully it zooms out. So I take sheets of paper and I print every page out, and then I rearrange. And for example, if it's literally, I don't know if you can see, it might be too blurry, but there's blue and orange. So I separate geographically at first. Like blue was, I think, technically Provincetown, and I think red was France because it's scarier. France, no. But then I think I start to arrange into some, I don't know, you can't really see. It might be too blurry. There's a form that happens. Yeah, so I think it depends, because I hate outlines. Like I hate someone telling me, even in high school or college, like to do, especially a history paper, right? You must do this, and then this happens, and this happens, and this happens. I'm like, no way. They may have bombed them, but someone screwed someone over somewhere in that story that changed the history. So your outline is also storyline, like bullshit. So I think in terms of, if I'm answering your question directly, Vivian, I think I'm always writing, even when I text, like even when I email, when I sign off, it's a chance to have some style, Am I going to say sincerely? Am I going to say fondly? Am I going to say best? Am I going to say best regards? Am I going to say hello? Like the French, they say good morning every time they write an email. Like their first line is bonjour, even if they don't want to. And I think in the US, we literally walk into the store sometimes. It's like, especially in New York, maybe, or Boston too, I think. No one really says good morning. But, okay. Hi, Carol. Yeah, I think everyone has a chance to be stylistic when they write. So I view every chance to be a chance to speak, you know, or a chance not to speak. Yeah, I'm always like, Cary, like even when I like write emails to Michelle or you, I'm like, should I write sincerely? Should I write no thing? Should she know that I'm stressed? And I'll just like not write, just write Josh. Should I write mischievously? Like the email listserv I do, I say mischief because I think
Right.
it's tough.
Right.
Especially like it can be ironic, like best regards. I sometimes I hate that person, you know, because they're
Well,
like the government.
well, I think the key is to never lie. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm never lying though. I'm just being
just,
ironic if I say best regards to the government, you know?
okay, that's not lying, right? That's being honestly ironic.
Yes.
Talk about I don't want to preempt other folks if they have questions because we are probably running out of time. But talk about the cover.
Yeah.
Something that yep, there it is. That and Michelle can have understand my thoughts, some of my thoughts around this. It's a part of the publishing process where the writer, you're not in control anymore. Well, maybe you are. Maybe you'll tell us that you were in complete control. But you've done all this work. You created all these worlds, and now there's like some other folks who are involved in sort of giving.
It's terrible.
Voice. So what was your experience like? And tell us about that choice.
So I was lucky. My publisher is based in Sweden. It's a very small team. They have a graphic designer who sometimes also functions as the editor, which depends on the individual you're working with. She is very trustworthy and very involved in letting me say I have a decision. But in Swedish fashion, she has the final word because she's the one doing it. And it's a dialogue. If I'm dealing with my French publisher, because I write for one in Switzerland, they want to talk about the color blue. Like they're not talking about, like they'd be like, so we want to talk about this orange that you chose, like, is that really orange or is that like red, is that like sunset orange or like glass of wine orange? Is that Aperol Spritz orange? Like, what? Like, like it culturally depends who you're talking to. Like she was like, she's very practical. Like we need, because the danger is being too abstract. Like if there's no, like to me, the octopus was like, okay, it's an intelligent, moving, live thing that some people have stereotypes of, some people don't. Some people have prejudices towards, some people don't. It lives underwater, but also it changes forms, On some level, I didn't have control. I had to let go. I mean, she had to send me an email that was like, you're done, no more input. And that's hard because you feel like there's always a chance to change things, but you don't because time runs out for all of us. So
thank God.
Yeah, thank God. I'm tired of you can go crazy, like Michelle, she helped me huge with just, she wanted my name bigger. And I'm like, but no,
hold it up.
Like my name originally was like, it was like 8-point font, because I'm like, it's not about me, it's about the work. She's like, okay, but you publish this. So like people need to search for your name, but I'm like, no, my name is Bookman. It should be clever enough that like they'll, and it's constantly, I think, a negotiation, but also as long as you trust the people you're with, it doesn't matter. In the end, that work is sacred with the people you created it with. And they're the ones who know that how hard you worked or how hard you didn't work or what you could do better. So I think that was more important than saying I had to like choose the color sunset orange, because that's just, the French are crazy. That's my final opinion of them. They would argue otherwise.
I think that's sage advice for anybody trying to put a book into the world.
Yeah, it's really hard to let go, especially when you've done it yourself. But I think like Obama, someone had a quote where it's like, having children is like having your heart on your shoulder, heart outside of you, I think it's the same thing. Like it's just brutal having to be exposed, no matter how old or how young, because you can get hurt. I think to Michelle's point, you can always get hurt, but yeah.
A Soto Saint said, I've just been reading some of his stuff, and he said, if you can't take criticism, then you can't be a writer.
Yeah.
So it's,
it's
and
hard.
it's true. And no, you aren't
And
going to have your name on the cover of your book in 8-point farmer font,
That's right. Michelle, can I say also what's really hard is being young. I'm really sensitive to people misperceiving me and feeling like they don't get me. And then my head goes, there goes my chance, because they've formed an immediate opinion. I don't have a lot of workout. So then they've set in their mind, and it takes in my head, I know it, it's going to at least be probably 2 or 3 years for the next book. There was my chance to form an opinion, and with certain individuals, they form their opinion, and then, and it's like feeling left out again, feeling like you've lost your chance and you feel really bad about yourself. So that keeps me more up than the book cover. It's more like, even though that was also really stressful, it's like, how do people, based on the energy you have that day, how do they perceive you at 1 a.m. in the morning, wherever? How is it? 2 a.m. now, Cary?
Close to, but you know what? Like, one day at a time. The exciting thing is that you've got tons of opportunity, and to make new work that builds on really, fantastic. I guess this is your sophomore novel. Is that right?
Sure, let's call it that.
Let's call it that. And you can only build on it, and you can only become a better writer. And
of course, you can always get better.
So no. I'm saying that you're already solid, so like let go of all the thoughts of like what kind of opinions people are forming. Just keep practicing your craft.
I know Cary from back in the day. He was writing poetry. Okay. He's a poet, and now his novel is about to debut this fall.
Yeah, Cary, say something. When is it out?
September 6th, 2 months. 2 months.
Are you ready? Have you let go?
It's I'm sure it's a process. You feel like you let go, and then or you've let go of certain aspects, and then you don't get something that you want, some recognition, and then you're back in the
And I'll ask Greg too, like when you have events, like when you have many people, like when you're at a huge event space and many people come to you with many different ideas, and how do you handle that? I'm curious, like how do you filter what you want to take and what you don't?
We try to say yes as much as possible.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm always looking for people who I feel like they're invested in community and that they give back something. If I sense from people that it's an ego project, then I try not so interested. That's not what our project is about. Our project is about bringing people together. So does it get better as you age, or is it just a discipline? Like, do you get better at finding that no, or just filtering it? I guess so. But I also try not to fret about it too much. Like, I do what I can. I make the space as hospitable as I can, and then we just take it day by day. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Are there any other folks that have comments or questions? Or Josh, do you have any sort of parting thoughts?
I saw you, Alex. I don't know if you were raising.
Yeah, I was. Great to be here. Thanks for everything. So yeah, I mean, I find the dichotomy.
Wait, hold on, Cary. Just so back. So Alex, there's an adaptation of the book into a film, and we got Alex to read Yepe for one of the workshops. So that's how I connected with him.
Hold on, you can't just drop that.
Yes, I
piece
can.
Of information.
Yes, He's very talented.
Hold on. You can't just drop that piece of information that there's a film project.
Well, you can If you're
What do you
Beyonce,
guys-
you can drop. If you're Beyonce, you can drop whatever you want,
You
right?
gotta put it out into the
You're
universe.
not Beyonce.
Maybe I'm different than Beyonce, but I'm learning from her.
All right, you're Beyonce. So what do you guys have to tell us, about this film project?
No. Anyway, sorry, I was just side. But Alex, I'll let you ask your question.
Yeah, no. I find the dichotomy between the sweetness and the bitterness very interesting for Yeppe, because there was that one quote, because we had so many sweet things, it was killing us.
Mm-hmm.
And we have all this sugar in our coffee to mask the bitter.
Yeah.
And he wishes like everything was more honest, like his sister Kasia. But then at the same time, it feels like he's afraid of his own truth.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, a lot of times he's hiding from the cops, and like he's hiding from himself. So like, what do you think? I don't know. Like, what do you think it really is for him in terms of that difference?
Yeah, I think he's afraid of showing too much, because then it'll provoke a reaction that he can't control. And you could say that at the level of nuclear weapons, or you could say that at the level of a relationship. Like there is a point that's too far. And I think in the US, I once heard a wine merchant say this, that we have the Coca-Cola palate. That's how it came into the book. But basically, we're so used to tasting sugar in the bread and the coffee or whatever, that masks bitter compounds. So I found that fascinating. And I think in the US, we're so exposed to celebrating a youth culture. Like I was just on a film set in Paris, and the people the casting directors paid attention to were the older women, not the young men and women, And I think it's weird to be in a society that, I think youth is a great thing. Like to be playful is great, to be whatever, but to the point of sacrificing wisdom is stupid. And I think that's being a young nation. Like we haven't pushed ourselves to be more honest yet, because I don't think we have to. But I think it's really interesting to even think on the nutritional level. Like in my first book, the person who wrote the preface talked about food being one of the more elemental decisions we make, in terms of like what we eat determines what we smell, what we taste, what we're open to. I know we didn't talk about it in this thing, but Ini, the Jamaican woman that Yeppe meets in Provincetown, is totally different than what Yeppe was born into. And I think if we're too sweet, then we are protecting ourselves. It's childish. So I think that's how I'd answer it. Like I think I teach tennis and I teach 5-year-olds. I was just teaching like 45-year-olds today. And then they'll be like, we have a swim meet, we have to leave. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not time yet. They're like, no, we have to leave at 2:55. I'm like, no, but the clinic goes till 3 p.m. No, we have to leave, And then it's like, they're truly genuine, but I don't have time for that. Like, I'm like, no, 3 p.m. Sorry, boundary, And I think we get that even as adults, like people are like, they're lying. They're like saying, I gotta do this or whatever, even the political level. So I think like it's bitterness is needed, and like honesty is needed to check liars, to check. Yep, because I think Yeppe is a liar, but I think he's also a truth teller, and I think that's really hard balance for him, because he doesn't know when to pull the trigger and when to put on the bulletproof vest, and when to be kind or when to be nice, when to not be nice. He's human. He never knows which emotion to choose at once, because he's human. He'll make mistakes.
And he owns the fact that he's human and that he makes mistakes.
He owns it. He's like Serena Williams. He's like, I am flawed, but I'm also a champion. I'm also great, but I'm also, people don't like me. And I also make mistakes. And then I get upset that people don't like me because they haven't seen me on my good days, So yeah, he has empathy. I think he has empathy for being human. But I think you can have too much empathy, and some people can get away with stuff. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Cary, you said something? I forget.
No, I
Okay.
was just interested in the film project.
Oh yeah, the film. Yeah, film. Hopefully, I mean, such a much different process than the novel, but hopefully it'll be shot in the spring in Provincetown. That is a
Mm.
whole nother project of politics to convince people to let them either be on set or even shoot it fake, talk about fake versus real. To make the set, because Provincetown is extremely competitive space. People don't want to give up the space, or there's a whole host of things I have to deal with in 2 months. But hopefully it'll happen because the director is phenomenal. She was the assistant director for Little Women. So she just has a tremendous amount of experience, and she wants to take a chance on me. And that's been a really phenomenal experience because I never wrote a screenplay before. So it was basically trying to get a master's in fine arts and screenwriting within 6 months in crash course, without the education. But, I think why not,
Why not?
So,
Right.
so hopefully it'll happen. And the film I was in, by the way, Cary, if you were curious, the French film, hopefully it'll be released. I was a soldier. Hopefully it'll be released, I think, next year. So that'll be cool. Because being on the actor side was really fun. Just seeing how stressful it is to make, like, they'll literally be like, you'll be on set, you're on a street, they'll be like, okay, walk. And there's 4 ways to walk, And then they're like, cut. And you're like, you didn't tell me which way to walk. And you're like, oh, you should have walked right, And you're like, you didn't tell me that, And then you feel bad, but then they're moved on, And it's constantly like that. It's like 4 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. in the morning, 6 a.m. in the morning. You haven't eaten, because it was an all-nighter shift. Crazy.
Wow.
Filming is crazy to me, like how they operate. But at the same time, it's thrilling, But
Right.
hopefully they have some close-ups, but I worked hard on that film.
Keep us posted. Keep everyone on your
Yeah.
list posted. Yeah.
No, but thank you. That was awesome, Cary and Michelle and Greg, and everyone else. It's just
Thank
nice.
you.
Like it really doesn't matter the amount of people. It's just who you connect with that day.
Mm-hmm.
Even Michael Jordan said that. He's like, as long as one person's watching, that's all I need to feel good that day.
Well, you had a very nice audience.
Yeah, they were awesome.
It was a great conversation, and you're gonna have to talk to me and with your French accent from now on.
We'll debrief. You can go on. We'll debrief after your vacation.
And we can close the evening out. I'll say this and probably embarrass Josh, but sometimes I get an XO when he signs off. Just saying.
Which is not ironic. It's not ironic.
This time it's not ironic.
Sweet.
Oh, cool.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Cary. And thanks, Michelle, for putting this together.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks,
very
Barbara. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jade. Thanks, Vivian. Thanks, Alex. Thanks,
Thank
Gary.
everyone who joined us.
Okay.
Good night.
Cheers.
Bye, Al.
Bye.
Bye.